My next claim is capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any other system.
Patrick.
How are you?
I'm Gabby.
Gabby?
Yeah,
Good
nice
to meet you.
So I would argue that governments have actually lifted the most people out of poverty. If you look historically, we look at China, for instance, had the most significant poverty reduction in all of human history. They pulled 800 million people out of poverty using state-owned enterprises and state centralized planning. They did work with the capitalist system, but they did it, most of it was done through state-funded infrastructure, education, and contributing to strong literacy programs, redistributing the wealth. I think that my other argument would be that there hasn't been an opportunity for alternative systems like socialism to pull enough people out of poverty. So we look at examples.
There hasn't been?
There hasn't been enough opportunities for them to succeed. And so when
Why
we
do you
say,
think that is?
I think that is partly because of the US, and I think because capitalist forces and global market insecurities have sabotaged these attempts to do socialism.
All right, welcome. If you're returning, this is going to be part 2. We got to get into PBD versus these anti-capitalists. Interesting discussion. PBD keeps going to the wheelhouse. If it's so bad, why is everybody coming to America? If it's so bad, why is everybody coming to America? If the healthcare system's so bad, why is there millions of people trying to get here? It's a good point. Some of these people got some very interesting positions, and it's great to have a guy like Pat holding it down who's actually came up from nothing and became who he is today. Let's get into it.
Hey, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Hi.
How are you? What's your name?
Zena.
Zena.
Awesome. So
Warrior
this claim
princess.
about incentive is one that we see
I've seen this chick before.
often promoted by capitalism enjoyers, right? And it's this idea that, profit incentives is the only thing that can make humans do things, get up out of bed every day, which has never been the case. Historically, it's not the case. Psychologically,
Historically, it's never been the case?
No,
What
I
has
mean,
been the case?
so we've seen
What's been the incentive?
the incentive is intrinsic motivation. passion.
Intrinsic motivation?
Of course. Have you ever heard of intrinsic motivation?
Of course I have. So you
Okay.
think people are going to go just do anything for no incentives?
The incentive is intrinsic, meaning passion, interest, and honing your skills.
Whether you get paid or not.
Well, the problem is that we're forcing people to, need to, work to survive.
So
in
what's
system.
the alternative? So give me another solution, another
May I
economical
finish
system.
the talking
Yeah,
point?
actually,
Right,
I'm
awesome.
curious.
So yeah, the psychological.
Dude, I swear, man. I swear. This dude's employed thousands of people. He comes here respectfully. And then instantly this girl's getting an attitude like, you lose so much credibility when you can't have a civilized discussion immediately. No one wants to hear that bratty type of banter.
Theory of self-determination is widely accepted in psychology. It basically explains that intrinsic motivation and passion is actually what predicts incentive. You're arguing that incentive is integral to profit-driven motivation. That's not true. Intrinsic motivation, at all times, at every single case, is going to, predict less creativity, less motivation, less skill, etc. Intrinsic motivation is what causes things like technological development. Some of the greatest breakthroughs have been from people who are devoted in honing their skill.
So should they get paid for it?
I think that we shouldn't live in a system that privately owns the means of production and forces people in this
What
position.
college did you go to?
USC,
You went to USC. What did you major in?
sociology.
Sociology. Who's your hero as a professor? Who's
Wow,
the professor you look
this
up to?
doesn't seem like a topic
Do you know
that's
why I
related to
asked this
capitalism.
question? The reason why I asked this question is because somebody convinced you of that.
I don't think
Somebody
it's
convinced you that that is
So
the way
psychology
that
and studies convinced
produces-
me of this fact
Yeah,
about the human
but
mind.
unfortunately, to your claim, results show that the greatest
Results
economical
show that
system
intrinsic
is
motivation predicts more
capitalism
creativity
that allows
and more
people to go
profit
above and
than
beyond
anything
and
like
solve
extrinsic
every
motivation.
single issue out there. An entrepreneur who gets up, who says,
What was your
"I'm
claim
gonna
again,
be-
mister?
I'm going to incent."
Oh my gosh, this girl needs to go. Jubilee, don't bring this girl back. Like, dang. I'm having a hard time with this one. First of all, what she's saying is stupid. Of course, like, you're going to have the Einsteins of the world. They're going to invent, because that's what they love to do. But they need to be funded. They need to be cherished. They need to be taken care of in order to do those kinds of things. So what she's saying is just insane. It's insane.
The
Incentive. What about
entrepreneur who has
incentive?
an incentive to go out there and build their lives and you put
So
no
I'm saying that this
monetary
incentive that you're talking about,
Yeah.
what predicts the best incentive, the best drive, and the best
So
creativity
what do you think about
has been
Elon
proven
Musk?
by
What do you think
psychology.
about Elon Musk?
Can we respond to my claim?
This is about incentive.
All right, awesome. So you're arguing that incentive is intrinsic and tied to extrinsic motivation. What we find is that the best incentive comes from intrinsic motivation.
So a person that's passionate about solving an issue is going to build something bigger than somebody else that's not.
Yeah, so someone who has a true passion for this.
Yeah, so
Exactly. So profit motivation is not the thing that's driving innovation, right?
course it is.
Psychology.
Of course
So
it is.
psychology proves that that's not the
if
case.
there's not-
that
if
profit's
there's-
not the reason
if
that we
there's
have
not-
the greatest inventions that we do today.
I don't know if I disagree with the fact that there's a passion behind it. Are you saying people with passion, even if there wasn't the incentive to make as much money as they would make, people would still
That's
pursue
exactly
it
what,
even with or without money?
That's what psychology
Well,
says.
your claims are wrong because
not true.
Whoever your psychology professor is,
It's
if
not-
you look at data and you find out how America, that's only been around for 249 years, schooled all the other countries that have been around for hundreds,
Yeah,
if
I'll
not
tell you
thousands
how.
of years
They
more,
schooled all-
they did better
they-
than others.
Here we go. She's going to say something about imperialism or taking over land. She's going to say some crazy stuff.
Because the incentive
because they
was
accumulated
free market
profit,
capitalism.
right, to
That's why.
1% of the population.
Not necessarily.
And continue to produce
Nope,
on that
not
basis.
necessarily. It's
Right?
not-
We have this. Okay.
It's
so
not necessarily.
Do we want to?
When you-
want to respond because you can say that
You've been interrupting the entire time. So if you're saying about the 1% are the problem and they're the only ones that make money,
That's
a lot
not
of
what I
people
said.
make money. You said the profit goes to the 1%.
I'm explaining how it is that America has become the dominant power that it is now. Right. What we see is that because we have this engine, right, this desire to accumulate profit, we morally justify things like going to other countries, imperializing them, colonizing them.
Ding, 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 ding. Man, if I had a shot, I would take it. You knew that was coming. We're imperializing, we're colonizing this, we're that. Never been a country with more power and has done less to poorer, more defenseless countries in the history of humanity. If America wanted to, it could have dominated the world a long time ago. But it chose not to. It chose peace.
Extracting their resources, right, to funnel our country, right? Social democracies in the Nordic countries don't do this. So yeah, they might not be the wealthiest power, but they, have higher rates of education, literacy, human satisfaction.
This education stuff, like they always go back to that wheelhouse. Oh, they got their degrees. They got more degrees. They got more degrees. Like, congratulations. Do they have the same student loan debt crisis that we have in America? Because that's not something that I'd be cheering about.
Etc. Right? So it depends on what we actually value in a society. Do we value well-being or do we value profit accumulation?
Validates your point. If that's the case, people would move to those states. They don't. When you judge a great restaurant by the amount of people that come in, you can say the food sucks here.
Yeah,
you
so
can say the
there were
service
millions
sucks
of people
here.
that lived
but
in
everybody's
Germany.
lined up to want to come here. They're not lined up to go into
so
those
there are
countries.
there are
They're just used by professors as theories.
There were millions of people that also lived
right.
in Germany in the 1920s.
I lived in Germany before as well for 2 years.
Hey, before we go any further, we want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News for powering the fact checks in this video. Straight Arrow News is on a...
My next claim is capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than any other system.
Facts.
Patrick.
How are you?
I'm Gabby.
Gabby?
Yeah.
Good
nice
to meet you.
So I would argue that governments have actually lifted the most people out of poverty. If you look historically, we look at China, for instance, had the most significant poverty reduction in all of human history. They pulled 800 million people out of poverty using state-owned enterprises and state centralized planning. They did work with the capitalist system, but they did it, most of it was done through state-funded infrastructure, education, and contributing to strong literacy programs, redistributing the wealth. I think that my other argument would be that there hasn't been an opportunity for alternative systems like socialism to pull enough people out of poverty. So we look at examples.
Someone bust out the meme. Someone bust out the meme where they say true socialism's never been tried. True socialism never been tried. It's never been tried. It's never been tried. Yeah. Just killed how many people throughout history?
Hasn't been?
There hasn't been enough opportunities for them to succeed. And so when
Why
we
do you
say,
think that is?
I think that is partly because of the US, and I think because capitalist forces and global market insecurities have sabotaged these attempts to do socialism. So we look at an example in Chile in the 1960s, they elected a democratic socialist, and he proposed literacy reform, wealth redistribution, land reform, and all of that
wealth
was a threat,
distribution.
obviously, to the United States because McCarthyism was on the rise at the time. And so instead of allowing Allende to have a chance with that, the U.S. Orchestrated a CIA-backed coup to take over and to have a military dictatorship that led the country instead of Allende, who actually was having a lot of success in reducing the poverty rates before the U.S. interfered. And so I think we look at other parts of Latin America, like Venezuela, for instance, and we see the same thing. We see that the U.S. has interfered several times. If
the U.S. interfered, it wasn't because they were socialists. They could care less about that. It would have had something to do with resources or not playing ball in the global market. They don't care. They don't care. It doesn't matter.
With Chavez in Venezuela, he was able to reduce the poverty reduction in half in the first decade of him being in office. And he was sabotaged ultimately by the U.S. and by a military dictatorship, so that the people that replaced them were actually.
So may I respond? It's
Sure.
a lot of different cases here. So
Sure.
thank you for that. So let's go China first. Okay, so when you say China was able to recover and because they use state-funded, nationalized systems. So in 1978, Xiaoping, the leader of China, went to Japan. He saw what was going on with Japan for 2 decades. Every year, their GDP was growing by 15%. The economy was doubling pretty much every 4 years.
Sure.
They go over there, they say, we got to find a way to compete with Japan. How do they have fewer people, but they're beating us? They sit down with their leaders after a few drinks. Eventually, they say, how did you fix your economy to be growing the way that it is? A capitalistic society that they had in Japan. They asked the question from Xiaoping, the Prime Minister Fukuda, asked the question, how many banks do you guys have in China? He says, we have 1 bank. He said, it's a nationalized bank? He says, yeah. That's it? Yeah. How many loan officers do you have? Not many. You want to compete with 1 bank? Yes. He says, if you want to compete with us or others, here's what you have to do. You need 5,000 banks with 35 branches, with 30 loan officers. That's a total of 5.25 million loan officers and a population of 600 million people that are living there. You do that every week. You take 10 applications with these loan officers for small business owners, and you allow the small business owner to compete. They did that. China started competing. By the way, in America in the 1920s, we had around 30,000 banks when we were really, competing in a marketplace. In the 80s, we ended up having around 14,000. Today, we only have 4,100 banks in America. That concept of allowing just 1 bank to compete, it's not going to work. China takes on the idea from Japan.
If I can interrupt you, I think that
they start growing with certain capitalistic philosophies.
Thinking about this in very capitalist terms, which makes sense. You're a capitalist, but
because it works. That's the idea. Because it's produced the results.
About these scenarios in a situation where market mechanisms are in place, and this is the problem that I have with so many capitalists is they can't exit their worldview and try to see a world where socialism could be in place because they don't understand the untapped potential of socialism. And I'm a democratic socialist. I think that we need to build forward towards that with reforms, and I think we need to work with the government. I don't think that we should abandon the state. I also don't think that we should give state elites the complete control over society. I do think that we should work with the state to instill these reforms and then eventually erode capitalism.
But unfortunately, socialism has had hundreds of years
you're thinking in terms of
to
competition.
Produce results, and it hasn't worked. Do you know why it doesn't work, though?
It's been sabotaged.
It's been sabotaged, or it's because it forces people to do something they don't want to do?
Does capitalism not do the same?
No, capitalism gives you
There's 7 million people in this country who have to work multiple jobs just to get by.
I have to work multiple jobs
They're
for a season.
forced to do that because either they do that or they starve. So if the options are to work or to starve, that's not freedom, that's economic coercion.
Respectfully, if you do that for a period of your life, I understand it. If you're doing that for 30 years, you're doing something wrong. You shouldn't be working multiple jobs for the rest of your life.
So first of all, I'm not going to argue with this moral argument. I think that people who live in poverty, especially when we look at how many people live in poverty in this country, and also it depends on how you define the poverty line, but there's 40 million Americans who live below the poverty line in this country. There's 3 guys in this country that own 40% of the wealth. How does that work in a country that is
You really want to go there? You want to go there? Okay, so let's talk about it. So when we talk about the rich people at the top, okay, and you say, well, the rich don't pay enough taxes. Do you know what the bottom 50% of taxpayers in America pay towards the revenue that the government gets in taxes? Do you know what the bottom 50% pays?
Tell me.
2% of taxes. Do you know what the top 1% pays?
There's been several years.
Do you know what the top 1%? Do you know? No, hang on a second.
Taxes.
This is from the IRS. I'm not writing a blog from Huffington Post. This is not Daily Beast. I'm telling you the story. The top 1% pays 42%
I'll say this, the top 1% is about to pay a lot less in taxes because of the provision that just went into Trump's, your guys' big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The girl was very respectful, so I gotta give her props for that. But these arguments that seem to come from these people that want socialism to be tried so bad here in America, it always just seems to be coming from like a point of laziness. You just want to like float around, be assigned a job. You do it for like 4 hours, and then you have everything you need to survive. And it just does not happen. It does not work. So when she says that socialism's been sabotaged, it's just not the case. Anyway, if you made it this far, like, subscribe if you liked it. I'll see you next time.